Hello and welcome back to Ventura County Works. We have a special episode today focused on commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI as it's sometimes called. Here today is, of course, Rebecca Evans, the Executive Director of the Workforce Development Board of Ventura County. Also joining us is Celia Sandhya Daniels, a dedicated member of the Workforce Development Board, who's going to share insights on how organizations can be more inclusive to the LGBTQ plus community. Rebecca, Celia, welcome. Great to be here with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Before we begin I just want to let our listeners know as a trigger warning that there are some topics that we may be discussing that could potentially be sensitive to individuals. So we just want to tell you that at the onset.
All right. Thanks, Doug. At the Workforce Development Board, as you know, we are deeply committed to ensuring that diversity, equity, inclusion, and access are at the core of everything that we do. Our mission to build strong local partnerships and create upward mobility opportunities is inherently linked to fostering inclusive environments for everyone, where everyone can thrive. Today, we invited one of our newest board members, Celia, to join us and share a little bit about her organization and the work that she's doing here in the local community. So Celia, could you kick us off by just sharing a little bit about that great work?
Thank you, Rebecca and Doug, for this wonderful introduction. And it's an amazing day here in Southern California and to be a part of this amazing conversation. Just to give you a quick background, I have 30 plus years of experience working in healthcare and life sciences, and I started my business in 2018, focusing on educating, engaging, and empowering organizations to be truly inclusive from the workplace, from the bathroom all the way up to the boardroom. And one of the things that I started to think about is in my own life, after coming out as an entrepreneur, working as a business professional, presenting as Daniel at the time, and then coming out as Celia and continuing the same mission and contributing to the organization, I saw a lot of discrimination, even in the professional world. And I started my business to educate the community and also to be more innovative, creative, and productive, and also help with the workforce development within Ventura County. So this is a personal and a professional journey for me as we speak and cover some of these topics. I'm so excited to be a part of this conversation. It's so important in Ventura County, and this is something I'm just looking forward to. Thank you, Rebecca.
Great, thank you. So first off, let's dive into some of those topics, some of the specific questions that are top of mind for many organizations today. So could you talk about how can a company, an employer, truly promote inclusion and truly promote it without being what's called performative? Maybe speak a little bit about what performative is and how that's perceived. How can we true inclusion without falling into that pitfall?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've seen, especially during the June Pride Month, we're already in June Pride Month, and organizations want to be inclusive. They're learning, they're trying to be inclusive in terms of how they want to support the LGBTQ community. But what happens is there is almost a lot of pushback in companies today when it comes to the LGBTQ folks, when it comes to SOGI, right? Sexual orientation and gender identity. And companies sometimes don't really understand the holistic way of a person, and they look at their background and the culture, and they call it a lifestyle choice. This is not a lifestyle choice. I didn't choose to be trans. This is who I am. And I've been struggling with this for many years because there's a lack of education, even in the medical community today. And one of the things that I do with my company is to educate the clinicians to bring inclusive clinical practices, which I do as a part of this. But most importantly, there is a HRC Corporate Equality Index. They give 100% to some of the companies that are really doing a lot of work in sexual orientation and gender identity, especially with the LGBTQ community. But what happens is they focus on certain aspects and they leave out certain aspects. For instance, they love recruiting people who are part of the LGBTQ community, but they don't have the right framework within the company. They don't have the policies in place, they have the procedures in place, they don't have benefits, they don't understand the biases, the psychological safety in the workplace, but they like hiring people. And it's not about recruiting, it's about retention as well. So 34% of the LGBTQ community, when they find that the companies are just branding and tokenizing our experiences, and this is what leads to a performative allyship. And when it is a performative allyship, it's more about events and just representation rather than really going down and changing the wireframe of the company in terms of their change management processes, pulling the right behavioral, the structural, and the systemic changes that needs to happen within these companies to bring in those inclusive practices, which is missing in a lot of these companies. So when within 2 years, when folks realize the companies are not inclusive, almost 38% of the LGBTQ folks, according to a Deloitte research, they have left the company or they have chosen not to talk about the sexual orientation and gender identity because the company that they joined is truly not inclusive. So it is important for us to look at a transformative allyship rather than a performative allyship. And this can only happen from the heart of the employees, not just from the letterhead of the company, where the CEO says, we are diverse and everyone is going to embrace the diversity. It doesn't happen that way. The employees need to trust the leadership, and that's the way the entire organization should mindfully think about bringing those changes, both internally and externally, with the consumers, the clients that they work with, to bring these changes. And I can talk a little bit more, but I'm just going to wait for some of your amazing questions that you have, and let's keep the audience going too.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So what I hear you saying, though, is the performative piece is what we sometimes refer to as the photo op. Just focusing on the photo op and checking the box versus really having a culture of inclusion and comfort and safety for everyone in an organization. And I think that's a very important point. And I heard you mention HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, and there are a lot of good tools available through the Human Rights Campaign, which is a large national organization. But I also really like the organization, your consultancy, and local organizations that are able to provide information that connects with our local culture and what the companies expect and what people have experienced in the workplace here in the Ventura County region. So both of those very important tools. My next question is, can you talk a little bit about the importance of allyship in the workplace and how to go about that with the best of intentions, correctly and appropriately?
Allyship is an interesting and an important conversation. Living in Southern California, I always picture this. We are all standing in the beach and holding each other's hands. When the waves come and hit, we want to make sure someone is not falling down. We kind of pull their hands when the wave hits them. And to me, I picture that in a sunset and people are holding hands. That is allyship. When someone else is going through an issue, we want to hold them. We want to uphold them when the waves are coming and pulling them into the ocean. We want to grab hold of them. That is true allyship, and the way I picture that. A reason I'm saying this is because allyship is not just about one particular community. It's not about just the trans community, but also being an ally to the other communities. I'll give you an example. When I came out in 2015 in Ventura County, my story was covered in ACON. And I talked about being honestly a trans person and coming out in the community and trying to live my life with my wife and daughter, and how I'm raising my child and trying to live as a good citizen in this community. And after my article came out in ACON in 2000, I think it was around 2015 to 2017. I'm not sure, but it is out there. When it came out, the first response that I got, the people started saying that you're a man in a dress who needs medical help. You're not, you're just choosing this lifestyle. And it just hurt. Those words really hurt. And I didn't know what to do. I was sitting in my car and crying out in a parking lot, and I was thinking, I'm just being honest, and I'm not even mincing words, and why are people so cruel? Why can't there be some kind of kindness to a person who's struggling with gender incongruence? And gender incongruence is basically you don't identify in the gender that you're born. It's called gender incongruence. Previously, it was called gender dysphoria. Now it's called gender incongruence. And I said, I'm going to do one thing. I can either make a difference or I can sit and keep sulking. And I started standing up for myself and for the healthcare rights. And also, when I saw that I was standing up for myself, I was literally standing up for others. Like I was there for the gun control. I did the immigration rights. I was fighting for so many like healthcare issues, lots of human rights and human value issues. And to me, I looked at life differently, and I thought being trans is not my only goal in life. This is part of my identity. You know, I'm an Asian Indian. I'm an immigrant. I'm a parent. I have a beautiful daughter. I'm married to a beautiful woman. And I'm a musician. I'm an artist. I do a lot of things. I love hiking and blog, and I'm a blogger in this county. And why am I always being looked at as a trans woman? And I wanted to change it. So allyship to me is not just for myself, but I was an ally to the Black community when Black Lives Matters happened, especially George Floyd, and also the Asian hate that happened during COVID time. I started stepping up for others, and I was actually in spaces, even in certain conversations in universities. I was in spaces where there were no trans people, no LGBT, maybe few, but there were not too many people from the trans community actually there and talking about these issues. And to me, because I was representing the Asian issues, I was representing someone else, I was learning constantly. Allyship is one thing that I feel we need to be allies to each other. So I started educating companies. And education brings awareness, and awareness brings a lot more compassion and empathy towards a particular community. And that's what I started doing, because we can educate people who are ignorant, but we cannot educate people who are arrogant, right? So I always wanted to educate people, because a lot of times the companies don't know how to do the right thing. They didn't know how to even onboard me when I came in as a gender non-binary trans woman. My California license says X, and they didn't know how to hire. And they said, oh my God, what do we do? And this is in Ventura County. I was consulting for one of my clients, and they didn't know how to onboard me. And I told them that this is how you can onboard me. And I also told them that I'm going to educate you, your HR policies, your legal background checks that you need to do for an immigrant who is trans, who is socially transitioned or not medically transitioned. So there were a lot of ideas, and I was trying to bring up so that the companies can be educated, they can be empowered, not just for Celia, but also for the future of the workforce, the diverse workforce we have in Ventura County. And today, I know that this big pharmaceutical company can bring in a lot more trans people because they knew how to do it. They knew how to make that change when they brought me in as one of the consultants for their engagements. So change can happen by being an ally to each other. And I think by learning, by awareness, and also having that compassion, and not just stuck in compliance, but compassion. I know we're going to talk a little bit about it, but I just love allyship because it just makes me a better person.
Mm-hmm. That's so well said. And what you just described is you, Celia, joining hands. that experience that you had is you joining hands with others and standing up for them and helping them if the waves crash and they fall down, and they're there to hold your hand if the wave happens to crash on you. And goodness knows, we all experience crashing waves in life, and how nice it is to have a hand to hold. And you segued perfectly into the next question, which is, how can companies and employers foster more compassion for trans and gender expansive communities without just focusing on compliance?
This is an important question to me, because if you look at generally at the workforce in America or in even across the world, it's always been a male-dominated community, and then it became a female-prominent community after the civil rights movement, and then now we are seeing a lot more women in the workforce, but also we are seeing women with intersectional identities in the workforce. Like it's not just women, but Black women. It's not just Black women, but Black trans women. Asian trans folks, and they are all part of the community. And I see a beautiful trend here from a male dominated to female prominent and an intersectional workforce in the future. 70% of the millennials are going to be, and Gen Zs and millennials are going to be in the workforce when it comes to 2030. And the numbers are increasing. And this is the reason I am so hopeful, even with my daughter. I want to see that the younger generation are much more eager to learn. They are easy to talk to. When I first came out to my daughter, she was 12 years old, and I sat her down and I said, "Sweetheart, Daddy is trans," and that was the most difficult conversation in my entire life, even not the business presentations I've given to my clients, but that moment was the most difficult because I didn't know how my daughter's going to react. The first thing she asked me is, "Oh, I get it, Dad, you want me to call you dad or mom?" I said, "You're going to call me dad, you're not going to call me mom." And it was such an emotional moment for me because she was already aware of it. And she said, "What pronouns do I use?" And I was thinking, this child who's 12 years old, and I just had a conversation for 25 minutes. She said, "Okay, Dad, I got it. Don't worry about it." And then, "Can
Yeah.
I go now?" I was like, "Oh my, seriously?" Is it all? And to me, that was so compassionate, and it just hit me so hard. And it took a while for my wife to, even accept me because, growing up in an Asian community, bringing in all this, I lived half my life in India and half my life in this country. And I see that, there is so much of change that's happening within the workforce where the education brings in more awareness, as I mentioned, and also it brings in more empathy in the workplace and also empowerment, not just talk and empathy. The problem that I've seen with companies today is almost one third of the companies are stuck in compliance. Especially when I apply for a job today, let me apply for a job and I put in here my data, it says male, female, and choose not to identify. And I actually tell them that I want to identify because even California gives me an option to identify as a gender non-binary. But why aren't the companies giving me? You just say that, we don't want you to declare, it's okay. But I want to declare because I want my data to be collected. I want to be known as a supplier, as a workforce, as an entrepreneur in Ventura County, where I want to be known as a gender non-binary trans femme. And I just don't want to just blend in here. I want to be there to make a change in the community. And that's the thing that I talk about in the company is that let's not just talk about the EEOC requirement for the equal employment opportunities or just the OFCCP reporting, because sometimes we get so caught up in compliance that we lose compassion along the way. And it happens even with the marginalized communities, especially when you're working with trans folks who are disabled and who go through mental health issues. I'm neurodiverse. I have a little bit of autism and dyslexia. I didn't realize that. But when I took the test and I found that I have this, and I started being more compassionate. And also, there are more than 100,000 veterans today in our country. And a lot of them are part of the trans community. And more than 51% of the trans folks have attempted suicide. So this is an important place where when the national average is only 5% and think about 51% across the globe, and more than 41% of the LGBTQ folks have attempted suicide. They're going through mental health issues or they're going through all these issues because the society has created a stigma around it. And we need to humanize the workplace. We need to think about how do we make the lives better, for the trans and gender diverse community. We don't want to polarize, we don't want to demonize, we don't want to politicize, but we want to make sure that the workplaces are humanized where we respect each other. We may disagree. Even my wife disagrees with me today on so many topics, but she doesn't disrespect me. And that's what I want. And it's important for us to disagree. It's okay. And we do that all the time, but we don't have to disrespect each other. And that's where I think it's important for companies to really move the needle, the leaders in Ventura County to really understand that, hey, I want to be a change agent in my company, and I want to keep that as my mission statement to bring diverse workforces so that we have a lot of diversity within our workforce today in Ventura County. And when we have trans entrepreneurs, so people who are disabled, people with racial, when you're talking about racial changes, I mean, especially with Black community, Hispanic community, and indigenous communities in the Chumash County here, in the Chumash land, right? We want to be respectful of that. And at the same time, we also want to give opportunities. And that's where I feel that we should not get stuck in compliance, but move the needle beyond compliance to a point where we humanize the workplace, we bring in that aspect of inclusivity, not just as a buzzword, but integrating that within our company framework, policies, benefits. And that can create an amazing allyship and also a transformative organization in Ventura County.
Very well put. So getting beyond just the bare minimum of compliance and looking at how can we fully incorporate this understanding and policies around respectful workplaces and compassion, and having it be part of the culture that we are compassionate with one another, understanding and respectful. I think the way you illustrated that in your own family, even if there's disagreement, there's respect. And I think that is a point well taken for the workplace and for workplace environments across diversity, equity, inclusion, and access across all communities. So looking forward, you said a little bit about this earlier. What do you see as the future for LGBTQ plus communities in the workplace?
The future for the LGBTQ community is allyship. It's not just about the community, we're building that allyship. And it started from my home. When I came out, first thing is I educated my wife. My child knew that already because she is much more advanced than my wife, who's from India as well. So education created that the awareness, and also the fear is taken away. And that's what I saw with my wife. And also I've used that idea of allyship in workplace too, where for me it's concerning that inclusion should not cause exclusion. In many cases, sometimes today we put in a framework and it causes exclusion of certain folks who feel that I'm not a part of that community. But as I said earlier, the future is being an ally to each other. Like if I'm in a part of the I'm part of the trans community, and especially in companies where you have ERG groups, which is employee resource groups or business resource groups, and there is a pride business group in some of these organizations, but I don't want to be stuck in that group. I want to go to the women's group. I want to understand what issues they're going through in the workplace, the discrimination they are facing, the kind of issues they're facing in terms of imposter syndrome. A lot of things I learned. I'm constantly learning and constantly contributing. There's also the disabilities group, where people with disabilities are part of those conversations, where I understand how can I help them, creating this inclusive workplace with accessibility, with UI UX developed for people who are differently enabled, and also veterans, and also thinking about expanding it a little bit on the racial side, understanding the Black ERGs, understanding what issues they are going through in Ventura County, and Hispanic community. I wanted to learn Spanish in my journey. That's one of my goals this year. Because I want to learn. I want to be a part of what's going on in the community. At the same time, I'm also thinking about the Asian community as an immigrant and an Asian. How can I thrive in a county where I feel that there is a lot of companies, they want to hire people like us, but at the same time, sometimes they don't know about the culture. English is my not second language, third language. But in spite of that, I want to contribute. I want to learn. I've joined the Toastmasters, and today I attend the Toastmasters in Ventura County here. Diversity, we call it Diversity Toastmasters. And I started learning and I started contributing. In fact, I should give it back to the American Job Center, because I attended a 1-week training with the Open, where I went through the resume writing, I went through interviews, and I attended the session, and I was able to give it back to the community. I'm still doing that, as how can you take the resume of people from the unrecognized communities and help them. So just as a trans person, I'm not just working with my own community. In fact, I have built allyships with a lot of folks who are not part of the LGBTQ community, because that's the way we can move the needle. We need to hold each other's hands. We need to learn. We need to understand, and also amplify their voices, bring visibility to their businesses, and also bring visibility to some of the challenges and the barriers in the workforce. And that is what is created. And that's what I look at as, I call it DEI 2.0. DEI was always there as part of my life, even before it was implemented. And I love it, the way that's, the people have captured and they're talking about DEI. But to me, DEI was part of my life. It's always part of my life, and it's always going to be part of my life, whether it's going away or not. But it's such an important aspect in the workplace. And one last thing that I want to mention is I don't want to be struggling when I see the future of the workforce today. I was talking to my friend's child who is in high school, and she goes to Oxnard High School here. And I was talking to her about what do you want to do in future? She's thinking about AI and she's thinking about robotics. She's thinking about STEM, and they are thinking about the future, and they do not think about all these issues. And as an adult, as a person in the community, I want to remove barriers that they're facing today, even in a bathroom setting, even in certain aspects of education, what they're going through, they're getting bullied in school. We want to remove those barriers so that these children can be successful and they can join companies as interns and thrive in those companies. And to me, I don't want to create monuments for people like us. We want to create pathways for the younger generation. And that's why we believe in the workforce development. We are doing a lot of changes. Trust me, I was just sharing with my wife yesterday that I'm so glad to be part of this organization, because we are all in a different works, different part of the industries, but we are able to think unanimously and agree upon a lot of areas, which is we want to humanize workplace. We want to change the workplace. We want to bring an opportunity, economic empowerment, and health equity into the workplace. To me, that is important. I want to see trans people going to the moon. I want to see the LGBT community like Alan Turing and Lynn Conway, who developed the chip that we use for mobile today. She recently passed away. All of them to be innovators and explorers and creating a change in the world. And that's the future that I want to look at. We don't want to be struggling with small issues, getting bullied in school, but I hope we are past that. It's my ambition. I know it's big time. So.
Well, I'm glad that's your ambition. I think the world will be a better place for that. And we are so appreciative to have you as a part of the Workforce Development Board, bringing your insight, your understanding, your expertise, and not to mention your background and your affinity for data and science and all of those talents and information that you bring and hold us accountable for as a board member as well. So like many people, multifaceted and multi-talented, and we really appreciate that. I do want to mention as we start to close out here, and thank you. The Workforce Development Board of Ventura County just hosted our first Pride Career Fair at the America's Job Center of California that's located in Oxnard. We had that career fair this week. Celia, you were instrumental in helping us put that together. We partnered with the Diversity Collective of Ventura County, and really appreciate that at the beginning we had 15 employers there, ended up having over 80 people come through the career fair. But you took the time to have a gentle conversation with each of the employers to just talk with them about what their approach might be, answer any questions they have, and help them navigate how to welcome in and recruit at a Pride career fair.
Absolutely. I think it's important, as I mentioned earlier, it's important for the companies to, sometimes they know what to do. They want to do the right thing. For instance, they'll say that I don't want to discriminate, or we don't discriminate. Instead of saying we don't discriminate, you can say I'm an ally to the community. It's such a simple word that makes a huge difference for the community. And I saw such an amazing allyship, and everyone was smiling. I went to each of the employers and I smiled at them and I was asking about what they do. And I saw something very important. And even with the staff that I was working with, entire team, Cynthia, Colleen, a lot of them, Roxanne, and a lot of them, amazing people I worked with. And they are just in the mission to do something right and do something more effective. I want to end with this particular tone of allyship, and I see this amazing allyship. And I told them, the organizers, especially with the workforce board, that I want to do this more, where I can also be part of the disability workforce. We also have people with disabilities job fair. I want to attend that. I want to learn. I want to help the companies create that empathy. because we need to create that empathy and allyship as a circle. I want to end this with this abbreviation for allies, and I feel it's very powerful. And I coined this while I was working with some nonprofits. A is basically acknowledge your privilege. L is to learn to unlearn. And another L is to listen to the community, the voice from the community, voice of the community. I is to instigate tough conversations and decisions. E is to educate yourself and to educate others. And S is to be supportive by being involved. And I saw this amazingly integrated within the Workforce Development Board, and I was thinking about it. This is an amazing allyship. And as we are coming to an end of this Pride Month, Pride is not just a month, but it's 365 days in a year. Veterans Month is, again, it's 365 days in a year, and especially people with disabilities. But we do have this month to recognize and acknowledge. But I am so glad that the Pride Fair went really well. And we want to create this allyship within all the unrecognized groups. Even the Second Chance was such a heartwarming thing. I was just listening to those conversations in the job fair. Amazing change in our community. These are groundbreaking changes in our community. We need more of this. And I'm so glad to be part of this workforce board and I'm also learning, and I'm also being part of the change in the workforce board.
Thank you so much. Definitely appreciate everything that you just said. And it, as I said, it fills me with pride in our workforce board because we've been working towards that. And I know the other members feel the same way. So thank you so much for being with us today. Doug, I'm going to kick it over to you to round us out.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Celia, thank you so much. One of the things I love, you said several times, you used, empathy, compassion, humanizing. And I think, for me, one of the takeaways there that I hope listeners really hear is this idea of diversity, not as just, oh, what are these different boxes of people, and sort of just in our head, right? That DEI is in our heads, or something that we study like an academic subject, but something that's also in our hearts as fellow human beings. That, right, we all struggle, we all have hopes and dreams, and we can all support each other. I love that, the image you had about, holding each other up against the waves. So thank you so much, really appreciate it. Thanks to our listeners for joining us today, and make sure to follow the Ventura County Workforce Development Podcast, Ventura County Works, for more discussions on important workforce issues. Until next time, thanks everyone.